Live here.
Live!
But we don't have to necessarily know what that means.
What's the someday of blank?
I don't
there's
know
a
that we
reason
want to-
this story happens now.
Ladies and gentlemen, the movie writes itself.
Ooh.
Well,
I'm still streaming. How do I stop streaming? No! Hello.
Nice. Oh, 11 o'clock came too quickly and I didn't get my coffee.
Oh, no.
It's okay. I'll be all right.
Do you just want me to riff for a minute or two while you...
Right. We'll see. If my energy lowers, you can go, "Man, you really need your coffee."
I could just tell some bad knock-knock jokes for a couple of minutes. You know, I mean, that's really why the people are here.
Yeah, totally. You know what I realized, Jake?
What?
We did not really adjust our opening, our recap today, so we're gonna have to kind of do that on the fly.
Oh yeah, I need to get that open, and I'll kind of like try and remember exactly what we did yesterday. I'll kind of add to it. But shall I do it today?
Go for it.
Okay.
Let's first of all wait. Hello, I'm Ben Lustig.
I am Jake Thornton, also known as General Jake Barr. It's a trap.
Right, and you are with us at Ben and Jake Write a Movie, where we're writing our Lex script live.
Yes.
So, give us a recap, Jake.
So, previously on Ben and Jake Write a Movie. So we came to this with no real clue what exactly we were going to write. We knew what our brand is and what kind of movie we wanted our next project to be. So earlier last week, we worked through a bunch of ideas, bunch of broad thoughts, and they kind of congealed down into one. We wanted to play with the idea of what if a demon who wants to be a real boy, a real human being, was given the opportunity, if they were able to bring who we will learn is the Antichrist from a small town in America to the Holy Land. It has overtones of Midnight Run. It has overtones of the Terminator. We started talking through themes of taking control of one's destiny, and that our protagonist, who would be human, who is average, who has the potential to be the bringer of doom, and a demon who has abandoned hell and who lives in relative isolation, will be exploring throughout the course of the film. The villains began to evolve and will range from the other demons of hell to the celestials of heaven and all the police who are trying to stop them as well. We've just begun to structure our major beats. The characters are continuing to take shape and the plot is getting clearer the more that we talk about it. Yesterday, we talked really, I think, through working out what the quote-unquote darkest moment, the all is lost moment towards the end of Act 2 was really going to revolve around, and what shape then the Act 3 would take based on those events. Have I forgotten anything, Ben, or was that just expertly done?
That was expertly done, Jake. You know, the only thing I would say also is that if you haven't listened to yesterday's episode, we also talked about the midpoint, and there was a nice discussion as to where this major turn in our movie was going to take place. Was it, when would we find out the double cross, and how would that change the course and direction of the movie? And
to be clear, the double cross being that we discover that we're actually working for the bad guys. Dun, 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 dun. Or that the people who gave us our mission actually have an end for our protagonist that we did not know at the start of the movie, which is being that they're going to kill her because she's the Antichrist.
So we also decided yesterday that we might go longer than 1 hour if we are feeling the need to do so. And so we divided yesterday's episode into 3 parts. You'll see on our YouTube channel there's 8.1, 8.2, 8.3. Let us know if you
3 acts, if you will.
3 acts, if you will, of our own thing. Let us know in the comments if that appeals to you. If you'd prefer us to continue to divide those up into smaller chunks, or if you just like to watch and pause, because you know, it takes time and energy to do that. So,
and once again, please like our videos. Please subscribe to our channel and hit that little bell in the corner of your.
It's important because we want our vanity link for crying out loud.
I need it so I can put it on a t-shirt. YouTube.com/LustigThornton.
Subscribe. All right, let's get to work though.
Yes.
We always
I just need to make a quick PSA, and I forgot to do this yesterday. I have sick children at home today. Both me and my wife are working right now, so I'm kind of a little bit on daddy duty because she can't be, so because she's not a daddy. So if there is anything, I may need to pause momentarily and deal with stuff, but hopefully that won't happen. They do have everything they need, but I just want to let everyone know that might happen.
That might happen. So I think, I was thinking about where we're at right now. And interestingly enough, I do feel like we have the main shape of the movie, which is kind of exciting.
Yeah.
From a very kind of 30,000 foot view, but still understanding kind of our act one, our act two, our act three, where our major turns are going to happen. So, one of the things I feel like would be helpful, or at least that I've been thinking about, is getting a little bit deeper in our characters and really understanding who they are.
Yeah.
Especially from the perspective of who we've been calling Sam, who we've been calling Charlize, and at least looking at those two as our heroes, kind of just digging in a little bit more. Even if it's just, and this is the interesting thing about character bios, which we don't normally write a bio, but we do on our scratch pad, important information, and our conversations, I think, through them tend to just kind of deepen our understanding of who they are and where they are in their lives. A lot of people,
kind of people they are, because there'll be moments where we'll be working through an outline and going, oh, would this character do that here? Are they the kind of person who at this stage in the script would do that? And we've talked a little bit about that, haven't we? In terms of the kind of quote unquote Sarah Connor, Sam character. And it's like, at what point are they starting to make those changes? And looking at what's the final way that you want to feel about each of these characters, and then what's going to be the opposite of that then at the beginning, and what kind of person is that and why?
Right.
So I think it's all very helpful stuff to talk about.
And some people go really nuts with character bios. They'll go all the way to like birth, basically. And walk through, and some I've even talked to some writers who write out entire documents that are character bios. And I don't think that that's wasted time. It's not stuff that we do.
Well, here's the thing. I'm gonna tell a brief story about when I was at acting school with this particular thing. The lesson of the class was go away and write a character bio for yourself and come into the scene with another person and improvise a scene with that bio in place. And me and my friend Eleanor Flaherty did this scene together, and we basically ended up saying everything that had happened to us in our past. And at the end of it, the teacher was like, all you were doing was showing me your homework.
Right.
Rather than just living in it. And I think there is a temptation sometimes to, if you've done all this work, to put it in the script because you've done all this work. But the reality is all it's doing is it's painting a backdrop for you, the artist, to be able to fully create this character real.
Yeah.
So, again, like you said, Ben, it's not wasted time. But if you do it, don't feel that you have to use all of it on screen in a way that makes you go, hey, look, I've got this wonderful, rich backstory.
And honestly, I think that the most important things to discover are the things that might influence the story at hand. So, for example, I'll toss out, and this, I'm just riffing here, but, if Sam was the type of person whereby she only had a single parent and thus had no relationship with, maybe her mother, and that somehow influenced this new relationship that she started to build with Charlize. Now, I don't know that that's what I want to do. Again, just riffing, but that's the kind of backstory information that you would want, even if it was never like fully talked about.
Yes.
Because it might not be relevant.
Absolutely.
You would get the understanding of this character who has this need for a maternal figure in their life.
Totally. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because that entire relationship that you've just briefly improvised about Sam missing a mother. You know, could there be a moment where, you know, our demon Charlize is talking and asking about her life, and, you know, says, you know, and what about your mom? And like the answer could just be no.
Right.
You know, it's like, I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, we don't have to go into the psychological analyzation.
Yes, completely right. And so, but ultimately you go, that one word, no, it's all done in the subtext.
Right.
We don't know what that is, but we just know that there's not a great relationship there that does or does not.
Yeah, or you can be as specific as just her saying she died. Totally. And then her going, silence. Sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Done. Totally. Yes. Never talk about it ever again in the movie. It's not part of what the movie's about, but it does influence who she is and how she relates to the events of the movie.
Completely.
So, or like, never knew her. That would be another thing. Now I've got a completely different way of viewing the world, you know? And so I think, like, from the perspective of, let's just talk about Samantha, Sam. For a minute, and let's start with her, because I do think she's our biggest arc-driven character.
Yeah, and she is, I think, really our way into the story. Yeah. She is the person who represents us in this movie. You're going to empathize with her and understand how experience is more than a demon.
Yeah. And what we've talked about so far is that she is the kind of person who feels like she doesn't have control over her life.
Yes.
And so I go, well, okay. In the immediate sense, we've talked about, like, maybe she is in either a dead-end job or feels like she's going to get fired because they're downsizing at her company and she's worried about being fired, or she's just been fired. Either way, like, there's a very kind of clear kind of moment of her going, I have no control over what's going on in my life right now. But let's go one step backwards and go, like, what job was she in?
Completely. You know? And again, something that we talked briefly about yesterday was, and maybe this isn't right, you know, but what is, and it's not about doing it for comedic effect. I think what you said yesterday is right. But what is who's the interesting person who's going to find out that they are this bringer of doom? Again, I don't think it's, there are none.
No, I actually think it's interesting to have them be, but I'm a nobody.
Yeah, sure.
I'm no one.
Right.
Why would I, like, you picked the wrong person. Right. And you usually see that idea displayed with you're the one character.
Sure. I mean, like, it's a little bit Neo in that sense, isn't it? Right. Like, you don't really know exactly what Neo does, but you know he works in a company and in a cubicle.
And he's a hacker.
And he's a hacker on the side.
Right.
Oh, he's a computer programmer, isn't he? Because that's what Smith says.
Yeah.
One of these has a future. He's a computer programmer for a successful software company. Something like that. Yeah. Right. So anyway, but I don't.
But I mean, usually in, like, the one stories, you end up with a character who might be like, but I'm just a normal person. Why would I be the one? I think what's interesting about the flip on that is, but I'm just a normal person. Why would I be the Antichrist?
Yeah, sure.
Like, I'm not a serial killer.
I'm a good person.
Like, I'm a good person. I pay my taxes. I help out at charities.
I help my landlady carry out her garbage.
I don't even have, like, I'm not like, I go to church once.
I don't go to church, but I'm, like, not against people who do. Like, sure.
Is there a way to kind of just have her surprised by this be genuine? It's like she's not, like, in the sense of going, like, this doesn't make sense.
Completely.
I'm so in my own opinion, I'm uninteresting.
Sure.
I don't think she actually should be uninteresting, but to herself, she probably has a pretty boring life.
Yeah, okay. Sure. Yeah.
Is there a way to make it so that the job that she's in isn't all that exciting.
Yeah, completely.
You know?
I think so.
And hence, like we talked about either her sister or her roommate being another part going, why do you even care about this job?
Totally.
Like, what
So
difference does
yeah.
it make?
Is there a mundane nature to this job, or is it I don't think it's just a survival job, because again, I think and by a survival job, I mean, all jobs are survival jobs, but like, she does hope to move up, like, for
Right.
example,
She's not just working this job because she has ambitions to be a writer or an artist or an actor or something
right.
else. Like
Yes.
it's a career, but here's my, I would say, counter to that is,
Yep.
then does that make her being the one who made the choice to do this job and thus has control over? I'm kind of looking for this idea of like, she's lived a life whereby she's just kind of been pushed from thing to thing to thing without ever really feeling like she was making concrete decisions. So I wouldn't want her to be in a job that she's like has ambition to be the boss, because that is someone who is, at least even on a small sense, taking control of what their life is going to look like in the future.
Well, it depends, doesn't it? Because you can have desire for something and not have control over whether or not that, like, for example, like I think about agencies and like starting in the mailroom, but like she's been in the mailroom for 6 years, or she's been a receptionist. Again, nothing wrong with being. She
would have gotten that job because she had ambitions to be an agent. What I'm saying is, I feel like she should be a little bit even more of a lost soul. Like, I don't know that she's probably the kind of person who got a liberal arts degree at college and never really figured out what it was that she wants to do with her life. In fact, I find it really interesting, especially people in their 20s. And it's been more and more, even I would say our generation, as well as the younger generations, that you get into your 20s and you still don't really know what you want to do with your life.
Totally. Yeah.
And I feel like, and then you just end up in a job because it just, well, I need to pay my bills. And someone said, come work over here, or you looked in the want ads, or nowadays you go on LinkedIn and, like, it's not this is my life's passion. It's just, I don't have I don't have that. And
but I'm working a job until I figure it out.
Yeah, well, I have to pay for my life.
Sure.
I need money. I know that much.
Yeah.
But I don't have like the ability to just pick up and move to, let's say she always wanted, again, I don't know that this is right. I always wanted to be an actor, but I don't have the money to pick up and move to LA, and there's no opportunities here that are going to get me there. And I don't feel like I have the support from X, Y, and Z. And I feel held down by this, but that wasn't my choice either. And my car is always breaking down, and there's all, like it's an extreme, but it's that kind of person who goes, because where we want her to go, obviously, is going like, I can be whatever I want to be, and I'm going to choose to be this person and not that person.
Right.
Yeah. The other side to the coin, and this might be really interesting, is she is a fuck up. She is someone who's, and so the choice at the end is to live a different kind of life. Is she the 22-year-old who is doing drugs, who does have a record, who has been in and out of, juvie when she was a kid, who is on the path to being the Antichrist because she has always been on that path, and thus discovers that she can change that path? Is
there somewhere in between that's not as extreme? No, that's an extreme version, but not as extreme as that. Whereby
not a murderer.
She's not a murderer. No, totally. No, but like, she's the kind of person who is always fucking late. She always sleeps in. She goes out drinking. She doesn't like, she really hasn't got her life figured out. She's a quote unquote fuck up like that, but not necessarily a druggie, not necessarily getting arrested for stuff, but like she can't get her life. Her life's just a complete fucking mess. She's a mess.
Well, I guess here's my question. What's the more interesting arc, right? Where we know where we want her to end up. And we know what she's destined, or they're telling her she's destined.
Well, let's just clarify. Clarify. What do we mean by we know where she wants to end up? Let's just get
at the end. She's not going to want to be the Antichrist. She's going to want to be a good person.
Okay, so if she wants to be a good person, then perhaps what you're talking about is right. She needs to be doing things that are perhaps
the opposite. The opposite of good.
But again, it's not like I'm robbing banks, but like I have stolen, like again, if I was a waitress, she's not a waitress, but like I steal someone's credit card.
Yeah, I shoplift.
I shoplift, that kind of stuff.
I'm the 22-year-old or 23-year-old who, I skip out on my rent payment, or I'm like, and you could go potentially one step further. It's interesting. I kind of think about John Connor and the way he was portrayed in Terminator 2. And granted,
that's interesting. Yeah,
he was really young, but what was nice about it is you go, this is the guy that's going to become the savior of humanity.
Totally, that's a really interesting comp. Actually,
that growth is what we're talking about.
Yeah,
like by the end of that movie, John is ready to be the John that he needs to be. But at the beginning, when you meet him, he's flicking off his parents, and he's fucking stealing shit, and he's got the crazy haircut and driving when he's not old enough to drive, and he's a
when the T-1000 comes after him as a police officer, he's like, oh shit, the police are after me. Fuck. Yeah, because I'm the kind of guy who.
So, and I haven't thought about Sam this way, but actually, what I like about it is, I like two things, right? First, it feels like it differentiates her from Sarah Connor, or at least in that sense. In that movie. Yeah. But there's an interesting aspect of the there's a little more 48 hours in that sense.
Yeah, sure.
Again, I go, the reason it kind of there, and yet our version will be even more of a conflict, because here's a demon, a fucking demon, and you're trying to tell me to not shoplift? Seriously? Like, you're gonna a demon is gonna lecture me about being a good person? And there's
a nice moment where, pre-discovering the shocking truth that she's the Antichrist, is like, why? What do they want with me? God has a plan for you. God has a plan for me.
That. In fact, she should be so not religious.
Absolutely.
She should be not
this
she doesn't even believe in God.
This is a joke to her when it's first. Like, what the fuck? Who set you up to do this? Are you one of Benny's guys? You are, aren't you?
What's interesting too is that there's almost a sub theme almost about having faith. You can't. As I said, I think at one point, it's like you almost can't escape that. Because of the nature of the movie, but because if you make our protagonist someone who has no faith at the beginning, in fact, that's why she's totally fine being a fuck up, because I have no faith whatsoever.
But it's interesting because that faith can extend and ultimately should fundamentally be about yourself. Yeah. And I think there's this thing whereby she's like, I'm nobody. I'm not just nobody. I'm a total, she acknowledges that she's a fuck up. She knows
it, and she's been okay with it, because what difference does it fucking make?
I realize that. Can we open up that? Because I think this is really, really, really good. Maybe at this moment we will pause part one. Because we're coming up to half an hour. We are gonna
and give everybody a little bit of a recap of where we've gotten to at this point.
Absolutely right. So we'll pause here.
All right.
For those of you joining us, this is 8.9, but episode 9.2. 9.2. Crazy, right? Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
So we have spent the first 25 minutes this morning talking about delving into, going into deeper with our human protagonist, who we're currently calling Sam. And we've had this, I think, really nice, interesting breakthrough, whereby we have through asking who this person is going to be at the end, discovering who we want them to be at the beginning. And so our 22, 23-year-old protagonist is going to be somewhat of a screw up if you have children in the car, and if you don't have children in the car, an F up. So we've just opened up our Scratch pad right here to start to get some of these ideas down. We're not doing a full character bio, but we are going to just delve into some ideas into who this person is and why they are the way they are. Not so that it can all definitely be on the screen, but so that we, as the authors and creators of this work, know who this person is.
And is there a by the way, that was a great catch up, Jake. Thank you.
I'm getting good at these.
You're getting really good at the catch ups. So the what I was just thinking is there's a moment, it's just a moment that's coming to me, right? Whereby it comes to this idea of like free will, and that Sam has this kind of fuck up attitude, and that this also will be a nice creation of conflict between her and our demon.
Yeah.
But at one point, the demon's like you were saying, it's like, why the fuck do you do this stuff? And she's like, what difference does it make? Like, my life is shit. I don't have, like, who cares and who are you or whatever. But there's this interesting idea that the demon is like, you have free will. The demon doesn't even think that she does. And then learns that actually
I like
she
that
does too.
Yeah, totally.
Like they both, again.
What difference does it make? Like, everything's a choice. I know it doesn't feel like it, but everything you do in your life is a choice, and there are consequences to those choices.
Yes.
Yes. So why you don't feel like you're in control, you actually are. What was the thing that I tweeted? So I read a really nice thing last week, which I tweeted out, which was we are all a product of our choices, but only the successful are willing to admit it.
Interesting.
Right.
Interesting. So, all right, let's talk about how she became a fuck up then. Why is she
totally.
What is her upbringing in terms of, I think what's interesting is that she may think, and in fact, there's like a cool moment. There's a cool moment where she goes, no, when she learns she's supposed to be the Antichrist, there's also a moment whereby she could be like, well, that fucking makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
It's like she could think that she was born a fuck up and would always be a fuck up because maybe she was told that her whole life.
Yeah.
And thus became a fuck up. And yet at the same time, and this also could go into this conflict between her and the demon of going, you're human. You could have been whatever you wanted to be. You have free will. I was born a fucking demon. I didn't have a choice.
Right.
Like demons are demons.
Yeah.
And then, again, it's like conflict. Sam going, oh, you didn't have a choice. And yet, what have you been doing for the last 100 years? Right. Feels like you had a choice to me.
Totally.
Yeah. And like this kind of idea and this conflict between the two of them of both of them realizing maybe we had more choice in this than we thought we did.
That's interesting. I like that. I like that. Yeah.
So, like, if she comes from a house or comes from the belief, for some reason, that she was born a fuck up.
Yes.
Yes. And is that because she was in a bad situation? Like, I'm imagining right now. A girl whose mom died and was
brought up by her drinking father, or stepdad,
never wanted her and looked at her like a burden and just always
totally. She's like bad Cinderella.
Yeah, totally. Bad Cinderella. But yeah, like in the sense of like, mom died and she got dropped on dad's doorstep, basically.
Totally. Again, and I think we are in some small town somewhere, as we've talked about. We're in the middle of
both are in small towns. Do we think? I mean, maybe. I'm totally fine with that. We at the moment have Charlize living just outside a small town. It should not be the same one.
Oh no, absolutely, yeah.
So
I mean, here's the thing. Either one.
Because I think changing the environment wouldn't be a bad thing. And I know it raises, things like budgetary concerns, but let's focus on the story for the moment.
Yeah.
Like if she lived in, just going to use an example. Charlize was living in what?
Sam lives in Portland. She lives in Portland. Yeah, I've decided.
Just because.
So you're saying Charlize lives where?
I was going to say, Charlize lives in a cabin in Big Bear and Sam lives in LA. It's like, or even maybe it's even further away.
Yeah, it could be further away. I mean, again, I don't
live in Colorado, and then but Sam lives in Portland. I mean, that's actually fine.
Right. Yeah.
So grew up in Portland. Why not? Let's choose.
Why not
right now? Jake knows Portland. He can write Portland well.
That's right. I live 20 minutes away from Portland. I live in Washington, so I can see Portland when I walk my dogs.
So she grew up in Portland. Now, I'm going to say that in this, Dad was probably
Plus, it feels right that the Antichrist comes from Portland.
That's great. That's awesome. So Dad was a drunk and made her feel unwanted and essentially like a loser / fuck up her entire childhood.
So there's a line of dialogue. I think we actually used that line of dialogue in the opening when the Gabriel character goes to Charlize and says, "We know where she is. Where is she? She's in Portland." Of course, the Antichrist comes from Portland.
Just gonna write that. So this is why a scratch pad is really great, guys. Sometimes it's hard to search through, but when you have a moment or something, it's like just write it down. It's like right.
Yeah. That's what this document is. It's just a series of broad ideas.
Ideas. And then what you'll see, and we'll get there eventually. Although I got to say, we're only in hour 9 here. And so we're cruising on this.
We are.
But eventually we're going to take all of this work and we're going to put it into an outline.
Yes.
And we'll be searching through this document as and when we need it.
Completely.
What's fascinating is that just by writing something down, it kind of sticks better. So sometimes we'll have this whole scratch pad and we won't even need to go back to it.
Yeah, absolutely right.
We'll
it's true.
Remember everything that we write.
Yeah.
There's something about the act of putting something in a document that actually makes it kind of.
Whereas if you just have it in your brain, you forget it. It's a very interesting point, isn't it? I wonder what the science is behind that.
There is. Hey, any scientists out there? Tell us. Why does this happen?
Things that are written down, even if you don't look at them again.
Right. So, all right. So Dad was drunk, made her feel. Did anything happen in her childhood that?
I mean, was he abusive, and not in a sexual way? I don't think we need to go there. But was he violent? Was he emotionally abusive? Yeah, I mean,
I think it's with Dad. I think it should just be emotional.
I think so too. Yeah,
but I'm wondering more in terms of her growth through her teen years into now what is going to be her early.
She was one of the kids who'd good. There's a great bunch of spammy comments. Hooray! I think she was like the girl or the teen, not the girl, the teen who quote unquote fell in with the wrong crowd, who found the guy who wasn't great for her, who
I mean, she definitely I think is she's the girl smoking pot in the car in the
absolutely. Completely right. Yes.
and skipping school.
Absolutely.
Or,
it's that.
in a bank parking lot. It's like, that's where we used to do it.
Yeah.
And she's like, skipping school, etc. But I guess my question though is, what was the escalation from that? How can we? I mean, we can definitely do things like shoplifting, and maybe she did. Got arrested in her.
Got arrested, yeah. Like she's
not like she didn't do hard time. She
didn't do hard time. She got some. Yeah, she's got a little record, but she's not. She's not. Like, she's not a criminal.
Did she have a DUI?
Yeah.
Is there this idea that she can't hold down a job now?
I mean, totally. I absolutely think that's the case. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because you kind of go, she's like, I'm not in control of my life, da, 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 da. And ultimately the demon's like, you are, you just don't realize it. Yeah. I guess that thing I'm playing earlier. Right? So again,
she's a person.
She's a Lost Souls. Nah, it's not a good movie. It's not a good movie title.
No, we do need to come up with a title though.
We do.
Titles are important.
And they can be hard. Yeah.
So far, this is the untitled 48 Hours with a Demon project. But is there a thing that will have perhaps happened recently? This is interesting. That could create another antagonistic force for us. For example, she can't hold down a job as an adult. Is she a gambler? Does she owe money to someone because she took out a loan from a loan shark? Does she owe money to somebody because of drugs? Was she selling drugs? Was she is there a way for us to actually have another antagonistic idea? We talked about the mob at one point, but is there a way for this 22-year-old to have, and maybe it's not that, maybe it's the fucking, is there a crazy boyfriend who is coming after her because of whatever, or is there a
let's just be clear on the purpose of it and what legs we're going to get from it too. I like the instinct. I will say I like the instinct, and also how long is that going to play out in the movie for? Because I think that will influence what kind of thing it is. Because, currently we're going to the Holy Land. If we weren't, and it was get from point A in America to point B in Canada, sure. Could I have crazy boyfriend hunting the whole time? Well, yes, I could. I might.
I don't know that it has to be the whole time.
No, sure. And I guess that's
I actually think what we're talking about, in fact, I don't know that other than the demons and the celestials, there's probably not anyone that
he's going after them the whole time. Yeah.
But each of these other stops could absolutely be an obstacle to them getting where they need to go, or to them. We talked about a biker gang. I mean, is she fucking part of a biker gang now? Is she one of the? Is she
one of the Hell's Angels?
No, I'm seriously thinking of the girls in Sons of Anarchy. I love Sons of Anarchy, but these are they're into some bad shit, but they're not the ones out there killing people either. And they don't really feel like they have much control in their lives. They're very much controlled by the men in the game.
Yeah, I'm not. I haven't seen that much of Sons of Anarchy, so I don't have an understanding of that. But if I were to say I am part of a biker gang, it feels very, as you were talking about John Connor earlier, the version of John Connor at the beginning, and I get that he's a teenage boy in that, and so I do fit, but there's just something that just feels like you're just a total fuck up. You're just a screw up in your life.
But whereas what happens to him if the Terminator never showed up and he grew up to be 22, 24, 26? Where does John Connor's life go from that moment where we see him getting in trouble with the cops, driving illegally, flicking off his foster parents? Who does that person grow up to be? Because that's really what we're talking about.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
Sam is the 24-year-old version of that fuck up kid. You know?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I don't see John Connor growing up to be part of a biker gang. Because again, there feels like something, and I know you've seen more Sons of Anarchy than I have, that feels like, oh, I found my people and I'm part of a gang. That feels very something. Again, it's like I am part of a group of people that is doing something. I don't know if
I agree that there is I think that's part of the allure to gangs as in general, is that you find a community that you feel like you belong in.
Yeah.
So maybe that's not the right answer, but I will say the question still stands. Who does John Connor become
yes, totally.
in their 20s? And also, is there a way to use that to create another obstacle to her life? Whether it's an Act 1 obstacle or whether it's an obstacle on the journey that they're going to go on.
Let's pause and answer this question from Chris. Hey, Chris.
Yes.
Chris says, hey, guys. He actually says, hi, guys. I may have missed this in an earlier vid, but did you create a log line prior to starting, or do you tend to do that at some other point in the process? Same with titles. Is that just not important to you initially, even for inspiration? Thanks.
It's a good question. It really depends on the project. I would say sometimes the title is part of the initial conceptual idea. In fact, I think we called the princess from like
moment
day
1.
2.
Totally. Yes, absolutely.
That was just part of it. Whereas for Winter's Night, which was our first spec that we sold in 2014, we didn't know that title until we were about to go out on sale.
I think it was like the week before we finally landed on that one.
We kept shooting titles over to the producer consistently. We couldn't find the right title. We knew that in that particular case, we were like, okay, this is the origin story of Santa Claus, but told as a Viking action adventure in the vein of Pirates of the Caribbean. The words Santa Claus, we were like, they can't be in this title. And yet, what do you call it? And it took us months and months and months.
But it's funny, wasn't it? Because if you remember the original title of that, as we're working on it, was The Night Before Christmas.
Yes.
Like Knight.
Yes.
And originally in those drafts, he was a knight.
And not a Viking.
And so it made sense. But, but with log lines as well, I think that's interesting. With this, we haven't gone into it with a log line first, like a specific log line. But the idea itself has become a bit of a. But it was interesting. Last week we were pitching our manager this idea, and like I fumbled through it. And I was like, I know it sounds a bit crap, but trust us, it's going to be great. I wasn't able to give him the concise idea. So don't get me wrong. It is helpful when you are discussing it with people. Or again, even when you are just at the idea phase and you are sharing it amongst perhaps your close, creator friends. Hey, can I just pitch you an idea?
Sure.
And is it helpful to have that log line done? It can be if you're looking for feedback on that idea.
I think it does. It does help for all of those things, but I also think that log lines can vary significantly, and sometimes you don't even need what one might consider a traditional log line if you just know exactly what the movie is.
Sure.
In a very kind of high concept, clean idea way. I think for at this stage, I don't know that a log line would help us move forward unless we were wanting to talk about it with other people.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think we're at the point where we could write a log line.
Yes.
And I feel like we've broken enough of the story at this point where we could spend maybe an episode or half an episode going, hey, how are we going to make a log line out of this?
And I think that would be a very interesting episode, because again, it's really trial and error each time. It rarely comes quickly, and you can work. I mean, honestly, we could spend easily an hour coming up with the best
version. Yeah, it's funny because eventually you are asked to do one, usually by a rep or a producer, and then they have their thoughts, and then they adjust it, and they don't like the way you wrote it or whatever, and they change it, and then you go, okay, whatever, do what you want, because ultimately the script should speak for itself.
Yeah.
The real purpose for that logline is just to make someone interested enough to read the first page.
Yeah, I mean, it's
then you've got to hook them.
Yeah, totally. Then you've got to hook them. Exactly. I mean, it's it's the old days of walking down the aisles of Blockbuster on a Friday night, turning over the back of the DVD and going, "Oh, am I interested in watching this movie?" It's the same thing with books, isn't it? It's walking down the aisles of any bookstore and going, "Oh, what's this book? I'm intrigued by the title." Again, importance of having a good title. Let me turn it over and look at the back and go, is this interesting to me?
So I would say, anyway, to answer Chris's question really concisely, the answer is no, you did not miss either of those things.
Yep.
And also, while sometimes they come to us very quickly and very easily, we don't usually feel the need for them at this stage, even for inspiration, because I think the story and the characters will end up leading us to the best logline and title.
Absolutely. There you go.
Great. So let's keep talking about Sam. And I was just what I was trying to say, I guess, was, is there an event pre-movie that is very representative of who she has become now that she's in her 20s, and could also have sort of a double purpose of, and this is something she's having to deal with now as a result of who she is, and is thus an obstacle.
If it were that she had spent 6 months in jail, I'm not sure I love that, but let's just play around with it for a minute.
Okay.
Does she have a parole officer? It's like she has to be at a certain place and a certain time, and the events of this movie are seriously going to fuck that up.
I mean, then you get that naturally leads us to the quote cops that we've been talking about, because now you end up with like the marshals who are coming after essentially someone who skipped out on their parole.
Right.
So that's interesting. I mean, it gives us kind of a legit way in. But then I go, okay, she's now really been in jail, and that's a whole other
thing.
So dynamic to that character.
Yeah, let's leave that on the table. Per what you were saying earlier, what if she owes money to someone, and Han Solo style is like, hey, don't worry, I'll have the money for you by Friday. Friday comes and goes, and it's that. Or
I'm gonna pitch in that idea. All right. Let's just say because she can't hold down a regular job, she's gotten into some kind of illegal backroom gambling shit like we see in movies, right? And she took out too much money from the house, and she now owes her debt plus the VIG, and she clearly doesn't have it, and so she's been avoiding them or whatever. And the muscle from this basically mob type situation shows up when Charlize shows up, and Charlize fucking beats the living shit out of him. And now they don't know that that's a demon or whatever. They just think she's trying to skip town and has muscle.
Totally.
And now they are fucking wanting to like go and get her and do what mobsters do.
I prefer that version over having been in jail.
Me too.
I think because again, having gone to jail feels like not
it's
extreme,
almost
but
too much.
It's almost
too much.
Yeah.
But I do I think she can, I think of Jessica Chastain in that movie where she was like the poker player. She plays poker in backroom private games and is in debt. Yeah,
and again, these aren't like high high stakes. It's like the pot's $2,000, but she doesn't have fucking $2,000. You know what I mean? It's like,
but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean, I'm not talking about millions, but I don't think it would be I don't think it would be out of the realm of possibility to have her in debt $50,000 to the house. I mean, I think the higher the amount of money that she is in debt, the more likely they are.
Here's my worry about, and again, it comes to that very first conversation we were having, and it's just about how normal is this normal person? You know, how do I relate to that idea? Now, I relate to the idea of owing people money. I can understand that, but can I understand and really feel owing $50,000 because I'm a backroom gambler? I don't know. It starts to get into the realms of going, you are somewhat, if you're dealing in high stakes gambling like that. Whereas if I go, oh, I owe $3,000 or $4,000 to someone, I go, oh, I understand what that feels like. And that's like small for certain people, but that's a lot for her. What kind of person is, you know,
I think for me, one, you know, the conversation about her being a normal person for me was predominantly about her not having like special abilities and superpowers and things like that, right?
Yeah, special skills that will help. That will help her.
She's not an assassin or a Navy SEAL. She's not a, you know, and she's not an alien or like in other movies that we, you know, she's not the princess who's been trained to like kill people. Like she's normal in that sense. But I don't think normal equals boring. And I think and it doesn't mean, you know, characters in movies, while they can be relatable, especially in movies like this, it's always somewhat heightened. I mean, you don't go into Rounders and go, I can't relate to these people.
No, of course you don't.
You know, like, and I think that we're in a movie that is clearly heightened. We're dealing with demons, we're dealing with angels, we're dealing with stuff like that. I would rather, like, owing $2,000 to someone doesn't get you in trouble. Sorry, you can't play until you pay us your $2,000. It's not like,
you're not going to chase someone across the country for $2,000. No. Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's just not enough. Otherwise, like, why do it? You know,
is there a moment? I hear that. I think that's right. Is there a moment where, at some point in the story, where again, I'm thinking a little bit about Midnight Run, where they have no money and the Duke runs a con to help get them some money. And you go, oh,
does she play poker?
That's what I was going to go. Like, do they go like they arrive in, you know, small town nowhere, and it's like, we haven't got any money. What are we going to do? And it's like, I know a way.
She starts a game. I think that's great.
Yeah.
But the interesting part about it is she clearly doesn't always win.
No,
so it's a real risk. And that's the conflict with the demon going, weren't you in $100,000 debt?
It's like, don't worry, trust me, I got this.
Right? That's actually a really fun scene.
Totally.
Cool. Great. So I feel like the debt needs to be big enough that they would send someone to basically break her hand if she doesn't have it. You know, it's that kind of thing.
Absolutely right. And what's interesting though, isn't it? Is but again, to the level of debt, and I hear you, and everything you're saying I think is right. But it's like, I go, say it was like I owe $3,000 or $4,000. And the guys come over the same time that Charlize is there. And what does Charlize do? Charlize ends up fucking killing this guy. And now it's like, oh, you fucking killed someone. Then that becomes even more, I would believe and understand why at this point they might be going after her for X, Y, and Z. Anyway, I'm just saying.
Right, well, now they're coming after her because she's hurt one of their guys, and
exactly right,
and all of that.
Yes,
I mean that's yes, totally.
Yeah,
I actually prefer, and I think and I think in my imagination that's really why they would be coming after her.
Yes.
Anyways.
Yes.
The question, I guess, is how much debt is enough debt to threaten someone physically? That's the question.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, what is that? I mean, is that $10,000? Is that $20,000?
Maybe.
You know,
if you owe me $10,000, I could probably like take your car or like,
sure.
You know, like I could. There's
$20K. Lily's watching.
Hey, Lily.
Hi, Lily.
You know,
20K. I know it's funny. It's interesting. I think 20K is. I think that's a good number.
I think 20K is a good number. Yeah,
great.
No, that works for me. Cool. Okay, so
Chris there's got to run. Would love to see a logline titles episode. Could be fun and educational. The best. Thanks so much. All the best. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Chris. We will post when we're going to do that so that you know when it is.
Right.
And please subscribe to our channel if you haven't already.
Yeah.
So
interesting. Chris is watching on Facebook and Lily's watching on YouTube. That's interesting. That's interesting. Should we pause for a second? We're at coming up to the 55-minute mark. We've kind of paused on this idea.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just going to put in 20K as our debt line, and that I just want to write this idea down real quick. At some point, bad mob dude shows up to collect at the wrong time.
Yeah. And honestly, there's nothing worse than the Portland mob.
Wrong time, the Portland mob.
I'm
sure there's some kind of gang-based gambling.
They have long beards. They wear very tight-fitting jeans.
And Charlize kills him. Cool. Great. So let's...
we'll call this a pause on 9.2. And welcome to part 9.3, episode 9.3 of Ben and Jake Write a Movie. Today we are going deeper into our characters, particularly the last half hour, talking about the character of Sam, who is our human protagonist. We have discovered through asking bunches of questions to each other that our Sam not only is not in control of her life, but somewhat more. She is basically a bit of a fuck up. Who by the end is going to become someone truly in control of their life and fully empowered and leading a life of choice and perhaps their version of what goodness looks like. So yeah, anyway, go and check out 9.2 if you haven't already, but this is where we are at the start of 9.3.
Yeah, so great. Awesome. I love your recaps, Jake. I think that's your job from now on. There you go.
I finally found my calling.
Anyone who wants Jake to continue the recaps, comment on the comments.
I just think it sounds really good in my accent.
Most things do. You're lucky that way. It's really unfair. Honestly, I'm going to stop for a second. It's very unfair that for some reason everything that comes out of a Brit's mouth sounds smart.
For some reason, everything that comes out of a Brit's mouth sounds smart.
See, it's bullshit. It's actually the only reason I have him around.
Exactly. I said one. He actually pays me to do this.
Right. Okay. Great. So continuing to go into Sam, and I don't, I'm getting a really nice picture of her. I do actually think. How are you feeling about like the Haley Steinfeld comp or the Florence Pugh comp?
I think those are really. Florence Pugh's interesting in terms of, and again, let's just be clear. We're not writing this for Florence Pugh.
No. It's just an image in my mind.
This is an image in our minds. But it's interesting. There was a really interesting thread that our friend Cole Haddon did on Twitter a little while ago about not casting in advance.
Yeah,
in your mind, and I was like, "That's interesting." Because
really agree with it, though. To be honest,
I'm not sure I did either. I mean, I just go, and I think, why do I do it? I like to have a picture of someone in my mind. I just do, and when I'm writing a movie, I like to picture an actor. And again, it's not to write for their voice.
No,
I don't think that we do that.
No.
No,
we don't go. No. That's not what I'm saying. I feel like for me, it hones in on that image. And we always talk about how, as we're writing, we are playing the movie in our minds.
Completely.
We are, regardless, unless you are someone who can create avatars in your mind when you're watching your imaginary movie or drawings of random people.
Yeah.
You're casting it anyways.
Absolutely.
Even if it's your uncle or it's your, so why not cast it with someone that actually is an actor? I mean, it's the same thing. It's like, in fact, we were just writing another script. We were working on another script, and I said to Jake, I said, in my mind, it's always been your friend Hadrian.
I know, totally. Yes.
Like, that's the thing, is like, you cast people because as you're watching that movie play out or that scene play out, it's not a faceless person.
No, exactly.
And how else? I mean, I'd love to know, Cole, if you're watching, like, who do you put in your imagination if you're not casting it with actors? Because I genuinely would be like, I don't know that I could watch it play out. Sometimes they're generic people. If it's like a background or somebody cop number one, but you know who that person's influenced by? All the fucking cops I've seen on TV. It's like they end up being cast as just like one of those dudes, right? So they're still being like, I'm still seeing their face and seeing them talk to someone and their expression and everything else. Like, has to be a person.
Completely. I agree.
So anyway. That's a long
way around.
Someone like Haley
like
Steinfeld or Florence Pugh. And it could be
Haley Steinfeld's got a lighter quality about her. Florence Pugh feels harder. So I think it's just, but again, like it's like, I like the idea that there is a contrast between the demon and Sam, and that there is this idea of a kind of lightness of, again, it's not lightness. She's not bubbly, but she's got a kind of like, I want the banter between them, Yeah,
I agree. I want banter, but I don't know, based on what we're talking about here, that it's going to be what we've said previously, which is this light and bubbly girl, and this is the hard and cold girl. I just think that they're going to have very different perspectives on life, and that there's plenty of banter to be had with that.
Right.
You don't need, I mean, again, I'll use our Terminator 2 reference. John Connor's not light and bubbly, and Arnold's not light and bubbly.
But there's such a difference
and either is his mom.
In their qualities, aren't there? Like, John Connor's like, really, he's got that kind of lightness and like, holy shit, like,
there's not really I mean, I don't know. He's a kid. He has a kid quality to him, but it's certainly not a light kid. He's not, he gets excited about things like a kid might, like a teenager might.
Yeah.
And I think that this character could get excited about things the same way that
that John Connor,
any character, even as a fuck up, even as someone who's dark, even as someone who may not be light and bubbly, can go, holy shit, you can do that?
Yeah,
what?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't necessarily have to be. I feel like this gives us a better arc for the character.
Sure,
I think that's more important.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think as well that she has something that our Charlize character doesn't have, which is going to be, she has a bit more of a sense of humor about things.
Oh yeah, totally. Totally.
Yeah.
So interesting. Jeremiah Lewis says, I rarely think of someone known.
Yeah,
cool.
Well, absolutely. Again, I think it's whatever it is that, I think it's just that thing, isn't it? It's like every creative person has their own way of approaching a problem. And it's whatever, it's so whatever works for you. Like, it's interesting. As you know, I've been working on my book. Some characters in that, even as I've been writing them, are certain people. Absolutely. And some people aren't, and it's like, sometimes that helps you and sometimes it really doesn't. And it's the same with screenwriting too. It's exactly the same thing. It's like, if it helps you, great. And if you want to put someone you don't know in there too, and just have a face, that works too, I
think it goes also back to like what we were saying, even from episode 1, which is there's no rules.
No.
It's just like, this is how we do it.
Absolutely.
I 100%.
That's easy for you to say.
Cole Haddon, and I certainly think that his perspective on how to do it is 100% valid. Like, that's the way he does it, and that's great.
Indeed.
So
yes.
For us though, this is kind of like in our mind, someone around that age, someone around that sensibility is going to be
mid-20s, early to mid-20s.
And I think that's important because of where someone is in their life.
Yes.
So other questions, just boiling, digging down into who
Yeah.
she is at this moment. Does she live alone, or does she live with a roommate, or with
She
a
lives with a
sibling,
roommate or two. Yeah. Again, I like that. I like that quality of like, this isn't someone who's fully independent, even if they're living in a studio.
Totally.
Like they just, they live in a place where like, or is she's not couch surfing, but but what's the quality of like,
I mean, look, she can have like a teeny little shithole studio apartment in Portland. I'd buy that. I mean,
yeah, maybe there's just something maybe it's because we've been talking so much about Terminator lately, and it's just kind of like there's something about the fact that Sarah Connor lives with someone else. That other person has a boyfriend. They're always screwing. There's just something about like I understand that. I know what it's like to live with a flatmate because you don't quite earn enough money yet to even have a studio apartment or something like that. So anyway, I just perhaps. I'm not sure how important it is, but it's just a question, isn't it? What kind of...
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it goes to her social life, the type of person that she is.
Totally. If she did have a flatmate, who is the kind of person she's living with?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I'm seeing her more of a loner type, which is also actually interesting because of the dynamic that then becomes her and the demon end up being kind of similar in a lot of ways. And actually, I know we were talking about the opposites, but their similarities will actually really help their connection to
That's interesting. Yeah, I just don't like being around other people.
And actually, like them being able to relate to each other in that way is gonna, I think, really infuse a nice growth.
Yeah. That's interesting. I think that could be interesting. Jeff,
that doesn't mean she has to live in the studio. I'm not saying she has to.
Oh, no, absolutely. Yeah.
What I'm saying, I guess, is wherever she lives, I think that it needs to reflect this idea that she is a bit of a loner. She's not close. Her roommate is not her best friend that they get all dolled up together to go out for the night.
No, totally, absolutely right. Yeah.
That's not
the image. The image I had a second ago was of Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man living in that little shitty apartment in New York, where the Russian landlord always is after his rent. And she's like, I get it to you next time.
Totally. Look, I had friends in my 20s in LA who lived in shitty studio apartments because that's what they could afford, and sometimes they couldn't pay their rent, and some of them ended up couch surfing on my couch. But I think that a really social person is able to get a friend who they then end up living with. A person who has difficulty in social situations or making friends or keeping friends for long periods of time is either going to live by themselves or have a room in an apartment where they don't really get along.
Don't really know the other people there.
There is the version whereby it's like she shares a room in a house, and she doesn't like the people that she's renting from, and they don't like her
completely, and
it's like a really weird fucked up situation. There's also a version where she has like a sibling or a step sibling who she lives in the basement of their house,
I was saying like she lives above a restaurant, those little kind of places usually like above a Chinese restaurant. The smells are always going, and there's something interesting about that.
So I mean, I think her living situation, whichever we land on, and is going to be not the greatest.
Yes, I agree.
It's not the greatest. Either she's alone,
or with a group of people that she doesn't like. Jeff Ong says on YouTube, Joey King is Sam.
There you go. It's actually not a bad idea.
Not a bad idea, actually. Yeah.
All right. Could be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, it could be. It could be.
Yeah. So from there,
yes.
Is there anything else?
Oh, I was going to ask this. And maybe the answer is no, but again, it's just the question is there a ghost in Sam's life? And by a ghost, I mean something that happened to her in her past that she still has not dealt with or overcome, that still haunts her. An event.
I'll tell you so here's my thought on her. I actually don't think she needs one. And the reason is because her entire life is a ghost.
I think that's valid.
Her being a fuck up is her ghost.
Yeah.
Her growing and starting and dealing with the fact that that was not the life she had to have led. And that she can start fresh.
Yeah.
Is her tackling her ghost.
I think that's right. As you say that feels right to me. Yeah.
You know.
Right.
But yes, I think it's a good question to ask. And actually, I'm even going to write down the answer. Yes. Like her entire life until this point is her, quote, ghost.
Yeah. For those not familiar with the concept of a ghost, it is, as I was just explaining, it is a something that happened to you in your past that perhaps the character still carries with them, that over the course of the movie they might be reminded of, they might experience again in some way, and it is something for which they either need to atone for or overcome by the end. The example I always think about is Michael Douglas's character in Basic Instinct. And he's got this nickname, and his nickname is Shooter because he accidentally killed someone in the past. And he kind of carries this around this whole time. I was in a situation where an innocent person died. And it's just an interesting thing that, but he just, again, I don't even know if that even fully gets resolved in that movie, but he's just got the weight of that with him all the time. And like, even his like fellow cop buddies call him Shooter. And it's like, and it's a real like derogatory term for him. It's like a real put, and it's like, okay, Shooter. And it's like, fuck, you know? Yeah. Anyway. So,
So I'm wondering at this point, and this tends to be also, I would say, the way Jake and I tend to do things is we find a place where it feels like a natural moment to stop.
Yeah.
Unless there's more that I'm thinking that we want to keep going through with Sam, the next kind of evolution of this conversation is clearly to go to our deeming character and start digging in there, which feels like its own conversation.
And part of it will be giving her a name that isn't Charlize.
Yes, so we got to come up with that name. I think that might be tomorrow's work.
I'm down with that. I'm totally down with that. This has been a really good conversation. And again, I think what's interesting just to observe as I like look at even just these conversations that we're having is through the discussion on character, we found other things that are going to happen in the plot. You know, we're going, she's going to be in debt to this.
These are intertwined.
Exactly right. She's going to be in debt to these guys. They're going to send someone over. Charlize is going to kill them. And then all of a sudden they're in the store and you go, oh, well, that just came out of the fact that we're going to going, oh, does she owe money to someone? Well, what does that mean? What happens because of that?
Yes.
You know,
it's interesting, like the way to approach, I was thinking about this morning, the way you approach like developing a TV pitch or developing a pilot idea versus breaking down a movie. And, you know, we've been told, because we're feature writers first, that we tend to focus on plot first and character second. And that in TV, it's all about character first and plot second. But what's really interesting to me is I go, on the one hand, they're not entirely wrong because we literally started with plot.
We did.
And that, but I always think of plot informing character and character informing plot.
That's right.
And so it's always been a bit of a, I think, confusion in terms of the process. I actually think TV writers and feature writers have far more in common than we're led to believe, especially since we've done now quite a few pilots.
Absolutely.
And I think it's about communicating, and we're learning this right now. We're about to pitch a TV show, and it's about how to communicate the ideas to an executive who doesn't understand that actually the process tends to be quite the same.
Absolutely right.
We're not going to not have deep characters just because we're going into a plot that is exciting. and yet TV executives seem to think, oh, well, you can't just tell me plot, otherwise you're not going to have interesting characters.
Yeah, totally.
And yet for us, it's always been, well, the two inform each other.
Completely. Obviously, the formats being what they are, I feel like in TV, you return to an episode and you return to a show because you care about the characters.
100%.
Whereas obviously in a 2-hour movie, you want a story wrapped up in as neat a way as possible.
Yeah, and of course you still need to care about the characters, though.
Totally.
You know?
Our friend Mike Lee once said to us, and I think it's absolutely right, in TV, you're in the pilot, you're leaving lots of doors open. And with a film, you're making sure that all the doors are closed. And I just like that. I just think it's a really nice way of thinking about it in terms of character. But yes, I think absolutely right. It really is all about character.
Yeah, totally. Awesome.
Cool. All right.
Thank
you, Jeremiah. Thanks so much for watching. He says, cool to see you guys going through this process.
Thanks, Jeremiah.
You see me go through this process too.
Yeah.
All right, Ben.
We get to do this, and it's super fun. And thank you so much for watching. And I'm going to plug the YouTube channel again. Please subscribe because we want a vanity link. And then,
and honestly, if you're watching, tweet about us. We just want to get this out to as many people as possible. Because again, I think the reason that we're doing this is precisely what Jeremiah is saying. It's we don't normally get a chance to see this. You don't see this. You don't see screenwriters go through this work. And I think I think I would have found it so beneficial to have gone, oh look, here are two people. Here's how they do it. Again, how can I infuse that into my own creativity?
Then you find your own way.
Absolutely right. Completely.
Just so everyone is also aware, we are on Apple Podcasts as well.
Yes.
You can find us there at Ben and Jake Write a Movie.
So if you don't have enough time to sit and watch these, which some people may not,
you can listen to us, our beautiful voices. Jake's beautiful British voice. You can listen to that in your car. And we will also be breaking this episode down into smaller segments, which will be on our YouTube channel, so that you can have it in smaller chunks. And then lastly, we will continue to do our Facebook sessions on Tuesdays and Thursdays, YouTube 5 days a week. So we will be back tomorrow live on YouTube, and hope to see you there, guys.
See you then. Thanks.
All right, bye.